All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bottom Line Live. Today, we are going to talk about all about 1099s. Let me just let in my Zoom people. All right. Here we go. All right. So today, we're going to talk all about 1099s. And I'm going to show you some samples of W-9s and 1099s so you guys can kind of see what they look like. And I'm also going to tell you kind of which different industries you need a 1099, all that type of thing. So we've got people live on the Facebook Live. We've got people live on the Zoom. So if you have any questions, just type in your question and I will answer it for you. Otherwise, I'm just going to roll through and talk about 1099s. So it is just about the end of the year. I know it's almost Christmas. Everyone is Christmas shopping, doing their last minute wrapping and doing all kinds of family gatherings, and Christmas is Sunday. So 1099s might not be what you're thinking about right now, but since it's almost the end of the year, this is what I'm thinking about as a bookkeeper. And we've been working on helping our clients with the prep for 1099s for the last couple of months. You've been seeing, if you're one of our clients, you've been seeing emails go out telling you that we're collecting W-9s, that we are getting ready for 1099s. Now, what happens is that the 1099s are due by the end of January, and they have to have all of the year's worth of information. So we end up having to finish the bookkeeping for all of our clients. We have almost 150 companies that we're doing bookkeeping for. So we have to finish all of their bookkeeping for December and then go through one last time and make sure there's nobody else that needs a 1099 from, work that was done in December, and then make sure we have all the W-9s and then file all the 1099s. And we basically have about 2 weeks at the end of January to do that. So it gets a little stressful. So I'm going to give you some tips and tricks and information so that's not stressful for you, because every business has 1099s to file. And if you don't really know what you're doing, it can be a little stressful. So the first thing I want to show you is I'm going to screen share this. I'm going to show you a W-9. And I say W-9 many times, and I haven't ever screen shared it, I don't think. So here, I'm going to do that right now. Okay, so this is a W-9. Let me see if I can make it bigger. It's a very, very simple form that you should have every single vendor fill out before you pay them. The reason for that is sometimes it's hard to collect this information at the end of the year. Sometimes people don't want to give it to you. Sometimes they've moved, you don't know how to get a hold of them. And this will cover you so that you have all the information you need to determine if they need a 1099, and if so, have the information you need to send it. And you can see here, I literally went to the IRS website and pulled it up, and it's whatever you call these, you can e-file it, or not e-file it, e-fill it. So you can literally type in here and then print it and sign it. Or you can print one, fill it out manually if you want. But here's all the information you need. So the first thing you need is to put your name as shown on your tax return, so your legal name. The next thing you do is you put your business name if it's different from above. So for instance, if you have a company called, Cake Bakers Inc. or LLC, but your name is Joe Schmo, you're going to put Joe, I don't know how you spell Schmo. Here we go. Joe Schmo here, and then Cake Bakers LLC here. Because we're assuming that if you have a company name, you have a tax ID for it. Now, the next thing it's going to ask you for is, what is your company structure? So are you a sole proprietor? Or a single member LLC? Are you a C corporation? Oh, these don't. Are you an S corporation? Are you a partnership? Are you a trust or estate? And this is for the person filling it out. for instance, your vendor, or you may get asked to fill these out by people who pay you. Now, if you are an LLC that's not a single member LLC, you need to say if you're an S Corp or a C Corp or a partnership, because those are taxed differently. So we know that you can elect to be taxed. If you're an LLC, you can elect to be taxed as a C Corp, S Corp, or partnership. So you put the letter in there. So let's say you're an S Corp. Great. The exemption codes. So now this codes apply only to certain entities, not individuals. So you are most likely not going to have to fill this out. It says, applies to accounts maintained outside the US. So you can pretty much just ignore that little box 4. And then you can ignore this because it says optional. So you just put your address in here. So 1234 Main Street, big city, USA or state, big city, Florida, 33759. This says list account numbers here, optional. So anything that says optional, you really don't need to fill out unless someone is specifically asking you for it. Now, if you're an LLC and you're elected to be taxed as an S Corp, you have an employer ID number. So you're going to put it in here, 44444444, whatever, this many digits. And then you literally print it out and sign it and date it. And that's it. That's all you have to do. Now, there's a bunch of other pages of instructions that you can read if you like, but you don't need to do anything with them other than read it if you like. So I would just ignore it. And when you print it, you only need to print or, scan it or whatever you want to do. You only need this first page. So now you're going to send that to the person that paid you money or is going to pay you money. If you did work for someone as a contractor and they're going to pay you money, you need to send them one of these. They're going to ask you for one, or they should legally. But I just want to show you, I tell people how simple this is all the time. It's literally your name, address, your tax ID and your tax type or your entity type. Very simple to fill out. And that's all you need. So this is a W-9. So I'm going to stop sharing. So now the next question is, who needs to fill one out? Any service provider. Now this is going to be a lot more companies than you think it is, because I run into this all the time. Someone says to me, oh no, they're not a contractor. That's just a marketing company I hired. Okay. Yeah. So the marketing company that you hired, unless you hire them as an employee, is a contractor because they're not an employee. So you only have two, you have a non-employee contractor, right? That you put in a 1099, and you have an employee. If the marketing company is a corporation, then you don't have to send them a 1099. But there's a lot of them that aren't. Too few people started a company together. They do marketing. They're not a corporation. So you have to get a W-9 from them. If you hire someone to help you, let's say you're a real estate investor. I had a conversation with a real estate investor today. We talked about this. If you hire a plumber for your rental property that is a business property that you're going to be writing off as a business expense, you get a W-9 from them and you 1099 them. Same with it, a gardener for your business, for your office building or your rental properties that's a business, not for your house. That's different, obviously, but anything that's a business expense. A lawyer. Now, a lawyer, regardless of if they're a corporation, you have to give them a 1099. So any law firm, always get a W-9 from them. If you, as a company, pay for any medical expenses, not for yourself personally, as in not if it's going to be considered a personal expense, but if it's a business expense and you go to a doctor, you go to a hospital, you go to a chiropractor, and you're paying for it through your business. And especially think of scenarios where, like, let's say a general contractor, sometimes I've seen this, they pay for their guys to go to the chiropractor, or they pay for someone to go to urgent care and they're not putting it through insurance, or maybe they are putting it through insurance, but they're paying for the deductible part of it, different things like that. You have to send a 1099 to that medical professional, no matter if they're a corporation or not. So you always would want to get a W-9 filled out, and I would do it, as you're paying them, because doctors and hospitals get kind of confused when you call them and ask for a W-9. Okay, what else would you need to give a 1099 to? There's a lot of things that people don't think of. Okay, now there's things that you wouldn't give a 1099 to. For instance, anything that you buy a product from or a consumable that's not a service. For instance, Starbucks or a restaurant, they don't get a 1099. You bought coffee or you bought food. A hotel doesn't get a 1099. But you know who does get a 1099, which is a different kind of 1099, but there's a few different types. If you are paying rent for a business property, not a personal property, a business property, they get a 1099 miscellaneous. So they get a 1099. Or your property manager, if you're a real estate investor, your property manager gets a 1099 because they're doing a service for you. A consultant or a business coach would get a 1099. You know, so there's a lot of different ones that would get a 1099 that we don't always think about. If you pay someone a referral commission, they would get a 1099 unless it was less than $600. So that is, you know, the caveat. It has to be over $600 for the year. It also has to have been paid via a bank account, checking account, and I'll go into the specifics on this because I do talk about this. So if you pay someone with Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal, and you're using the personal, the individual level of Venmo, Cash App, and PayPal, and not the business level of them, regardless of if you're paying a business, you have to 1099 them. If you have a business PayPal, Venmo, or Cash App, which usually charges you money, so if you have it for free, then most likely it's the personal one. If you're paying a subscription fee for it, most likely it's or you're paying, you know, a cost every time you pay someone, it's most likely the business version. So if you pay it through the business version, then you will not have to 1099 it, the individuals that you pay or the businesses that you pay, because Cash App, Venmo, PayPal will send out the 1099s. If you use the individual version, the consumer version, you do have to send a 1099 because that's considered same as a check. If you pay someone by electronic funds transfer, if you pay someone by check, if you pay someone by ACH, or even by debit card, you have to send them a 1099. But if you pay someone by credit card, you don't have to send them a 1099 for the amount that you sent using a credit card, because the credit card company will issue a 1099. So if you have more than a few 1099s to issue, I honestly recommend getting a bookkeeper or an accountant to do it for you, because there are so many rules. It's not hard to fill out the forms. It's a little bit, it can be hard to know who gets a 1099 and who doesn't. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to check if we have any questions in Facebook, and then I'm going to show you guys a 1099 form. Okay, Ethan says, let's go with the nuts and bolts. We've got nuts and bolts here. So we're going straight into forms. Okay, so here's the next one that I'm going to show you. And this is the actual 1099 form. And you can see how easy these forms are. The only thing that's complicated about it is really knowing who gets one and making sure everyone gets one. So this is a 1099 NEC, which stands for non-employee compensation. There's other types of 1099s, but this is going to be your most common one. There's ones that you can get from the government for getting a refund. There's ones that you can get, you know, miscellaneous for rents, basically. Usually there's all different for interest earned, all different kinds of 1099s, but this is the one that you're going to deal with the most as a business owner. So this void and corrected box is if it's a voided or corrected 1099, which the first ones you sent out are not going to be. So this is, and normally the way we do these, we don't really do these by hand. We use like tax preparing software. So there's a lot of different ones. QuickBooks Online has one where you just type the information. It actually pulls the information from your bookkeeping. You map the accounts, you make sure it all is correct, and then it will issue the 1099s and file them with the IRS. It doesn't file them with the state, so you have to mail them. This year, I think we're going to be using a software called tax1099.com, which also e-files it with the state. And it can also pull the information straight from QuickBooks. So we try to do it that way. But let's say you had to fill out one of these, from scratch, and you didn't want to do it through QuickBooks or whatever. You literally would put in this information. So the calendar year, you put in the person, we're still talking about Joe Schmo. So what was his address? 123 Main Big City. I don't know. We can find this. Excuse me. So 1234 Main Street. No, that didn't work. Main Street in Big City, Florida, 33759. And then you're going to put in your tax ID and his tax ID from his W-9. You're going to put how much you paid him. So let's say you paid him $33,500 throughout the whole year. Oh, you know what? I apologize. I did this backwards. See, I don't usually fill these out by hand. So this is going to be the payer. So this is you and this is him, which still isn't working. So I'm going to put in my name, Maya Weinreb, 446 6th Street, whatever, right? You're going to put your address here, your tax ID here. It's all letters. And the recipient's tax ID here. And now their name. And again, when you do using a software, it pulls in all the information for you and it enters it all in. So you'd have to make sure that the amount is correct. Now, generally, you're not going to have withheld any income taxes because it's a contractor. You're not going to have withheld anything. So these are going to be zero. These are going to be zero. And the state income is going to be whatever the state income is, probably the same amount as this. So there you go. And again, the machines know how to do this. So we are, in case I'm telling you the wrong thing about the state income, you can ignore it. Okay. So this is how simple this is. The only thing complicated about it is who actually gets a 1099 and who doesn't. And honestly, the software, like if you use the QuickBooks Online software to do these, you use their 1099 wizard. It costs you $15 for 3 and then a couple of dollars more for each additional one. So I recommend doing it that way or using a software. Don't try to fill these out by hand because you want to make sure it's done right. You can fill it out by hand. You have to, there's a few different copies that you need to have because one has to go to the state, one has to go to the individual, one has to go to the IRS. And it's just easier to e-file. So I would do one of the software that will e-file it for you so that you don't have to figure out everywhere that it has to go. Okay, let me see if we have any questions. We just have nothing new. Okay, good. So then I will continue. So I've pretty much given you all of the relevant information at this point about who gets a 1099 and who doesn't, but every once in a while I still get stumped and I have to go and research and Google. So there are different scenarios and situations where certain times a person wouldn't get a 1099. But the main thing to know is that any contractor, any service provider, not a product, if you bought something, if you bought a computer or something, you're not going to 1099 them. But if you paid somebody to install something at your house or your office, you would 1099 them. So hopefully that has made 1099s less confusing. And that will help you guys because they are all due by January 31st. And if you're e-filing, you basically have to e-file it by a few days prior to that. Plus, it needs to get sent to the state. If you use a software that e-files it to the state, great. A lot of software doesn't, so you have to be careful on that. Now, what happens if you don't send a 1099? This is something I get asked about all the time. Oh, do I have to deal with that? What happens if I don't send it? Well, up until now, nothing has been happening because the IRS hasn't really exercised their power or their rights on 1099s, but they can. They could, if you send it late, charge you a late fee of a few $100s per 1099 that's late. So you want to send it on time. And if you don't file it at all, you technically could be liable for that vendor's self-employment tax. So you could end up owing a lot of money. And we all know that the IRS has recently hired 90 million, I'm exaggerating, new auditors to come in and help them. So based on that, it's always possible. They have not ever charged these fees or ever audited someone on this that I know of. But this could be the year. You know, if they wanted to, they could make a bit of money from charging all the late fees on this. And we know they like money. So I recommend just doing it right the first time. Because also, you know, I talked about this with someone recently, with Shannon. If they find an error, if they find one that you did wrong or that a year that you didn't file, they could go back and audit you for several years. And now you could owe the late fees and the self-employment taxes for what wasn't withheld for all these years. And to me, it's not worth having that as a liability. Is it probable that it'll happen? No. But is it possible that it'll happen? Yes. So have your ducks in a row so that you don't have to worry about it and get them filed on time. You have to finish, you know, your bookkeeping for the whole year. So you basically have until the very beginning of January to wrap up all your bookkeeping for the prior year so that you know how much you paid all these different vendors. Because if you don't have any bookkeeping, how do you know how much you paid them? Then you take that information, you make sure you have a W-9, and then you file the 1099. And I really recommend using a software and not trying to fill it out by hand, because as you saw, I'm not even good at filling them out by hand, and I've filed over 1,000 of these. But you know, you have to make sure the information matches and the accounts are mapped correctly. So if you do need any help with this, feel free to reach out, especially if you have your bookkeeping up to date and you just need help filing the 1099s. I will file them for you. You know, it only takes, we charge about an hour for it. So if you need help, reach out. If you need a consultation, reach out. If you have any other questions that I didn't answer, please write a comment. Send me a message. You can, you know, find me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram. You can email me at maya@solvencynow.com. You can go to my website, solvencynow.com. I've also done a few webinars on the topic over the last, you know, year, and I have at least 1 or 2 blog articles on it. So we have lots of information, but I do want you guys to all get this and do it correctly. So again, if you do need any help, reach out. Okay, let me check one more time for questions. And I think that's it. And I think I have covered all the important points of 1099s, but I'm always willing to help. So again, reach out if you need anything. Maya@solvencynow.com, solvencynow.com. And I hope this was helpful, and I will see you next week, same time, 7 p.m. Eastern, at the Bottom Line Live. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.